Hello everybody. Okay, last clip I was showing that I was trying to clean out the lettering, and I can't remember how far in the recording I got, but basically I have cleaned out the lettering as much as I could using my wire brushes and as much as my hands would allow me to. So looking at it, you would say actually it doesn't look too bad. But again, it's not until you sort of have a closer inspection, like with the B up here, you can see that there's still a few little bits in there that aren't quite, well, they're either not dry or they're just shiny, and there's a few spots of them. So I've been playing this over in my mind over the last sort of 24 hours. As to what I do here, because part of me wants to reseal this, but if I do, it means making a big batch of resin for a very small amount needed, because obviously what I've learnt now is making small batches of resin is not going to work. So, I mean, it's also possible that that might be why the resin that I took off didn't work, because I'm pretty sure I did a small batch of resin for, no, I didn't do a small batch for the sealing there. So anyway, it's been playing on my mind what to do with these. So it's kind of like, okay, well, if I sand it down, am I going to need to reseal it? And if I'm going to need to reseal it, stabbed by a piece of metal, part of the wire wall. Yeah, if I'm going to need to reseal it, then I'm going to need to try and incorporate that into something else, because otherwise I am literally just going to be throwing away resin, and I don't want to do that. I mean, one possibility would be to use the resin to put another very thin layer on here, which might not be a bad idea, because I reckon it'd help. There's a few places on here where I do think it could help. There's a few sort of gaps. Now the problem is I can't really put a colour in it. It'd have to be clear, I think, but that's one possibility, because I mean, I was thinking I'm gonna have to sand these down a little bit anyway to try and get to clean up the letters, so going for another little bit of resin on top of them and just filling in any bits that I would need to fill in would work, but that's only if I'm going to need to seal. Yeah, I mean, I know I'm thinking I need to seal these, but I'm also thinking, well, if I can get away with not sealing it, I can basically just give these a quick sanding in the lettering, give it a clean, and then fill them in with the black resin. But I'm kind of arguing with myself of I think they should be sealed, but then it's, yeah. It's one of those, I know what I should do, but I don't have to do that because of the time it takes, because of already having done it once. I don't know how far back this clean of these has taken. I don't know if the original seal that I did is still going to be effective. I don't know. Well, I think the only thing I can really do is to start sanding it and see what I come up with then. I know I should seal it it just means taking longer and longer to get it done. And I'm not going to video me sanding this because I think I've already shown me doing it once already, and if not, it's just a long boring process. So yeah, I'm going to continue to argue with myself while I work out what to do. Hello everybody, and now before you get excited, no, this is not turning into sexual fucking videos. I am shirtless because even though it is, I don't know what time it is, about 9:30 maybe, the temperature is so high. And today's been up to 32 degrees and I've fucked up a bit today in that my round table I have had to make a start on because my little brother's moving back from Poland and I've offered the table to him, so I need to get that finished within about 3 weeks. So the weather over the next week is meant to be extremely wet, so I knew that today had to be a day for being outside, stripping the top of the table and the underneath of the top of the table, and sanding it down. So that's what I've done today. But as you might be able to tell from my face, I am very red faced. Even though I had a mask on, sunglasses, a hat on, I think I've hit too much sun. And to be honest, when I started feeling a bit sick, I knew I'd fucked up. So I've literally spent the last 3 hours sat in front of a fan, rehydrating, just sat there drinking water. I've got some nice cold beers in the fridge, but I refused to drink them until I'd had something to eat, and even then when I'd had a bite to eat, I thought, you know what, the best thing for me to do is just keep hydrating. That's not why I've got a drink now, it's I'm fucking thirsty. Okay, so yeah, so that is why I'm shirtless, because it's fucking hot and I am hot. Okay, since the last video clip to do with the resins, if I remember rightly, I think actually, I think the last thing you might have seen or I might have shown is that I needed to take out the resin. Now it turned out that was the right decision because I mean, the resin on here still hasn't dried, it's still tacky. I mean, I can still put my finger in it, and that's been about a week. So I made the right decision in taking it out. I then I scraped as much out as I could using, I could call them resin mixing sticks, but they're lollipop sticks. Yeah, so scratched as much out as I could. I then gave it a clean with white spirits, I think, and then I got some sandpaper and I sanded every edge of it as well, gave it another clean. Then I sealed it with clear resin, which meant ended up with a lot of excess resin to make sure it was dry. So yeah, so I went through that process of sealing the wood. Then I had to wait a day or two for that to really dry so that I could then attempt to reapply the black resin, which for some reason turned out to be a bit of a ball ache. I did mix together a lot more this time, so it has cured properly, it's gone hard, but for some reason it just didn't seem to want to, under its own steam, level out in some places. Now I don't know whether it was because of the clear seal, it may have been, but yeah, so it was a bit of a ball ache, and to be honest I ended up doing it when I'd had a few drinks, which wasn't a good idea. But I managed to get it to a point where I was like, okay, I can kind of work with that. And then what I did was I started to sand it down, because where the black resin was higher than the lettering, I needed to take a bit off. Or where the wood was a lot higher than the lettering, I was hoping to be able to take it down a bit. And I managed to do quite a bit of that. The only thing is that once you apply sandpaper to this resin, fuck me, does it take an absolute age to get it to shine up again. Now, I haven't yet managed to just keep sanding and sanding and sanding and sanding until it comes back to a shine. I've not managed to get to that yet, because of just how much sanding this has taken. I mean, we're talking going from 180 grit to 240 to 400 to 800 to 1000 to 1500 to 2000 to 3000, and doing it while spraying water on top of the resin to try and not continue to scuff it up. And then once I'd done that as best as I could, I then went for plenty of water with a superfine, and that seemed to clean it up quite well, but that's by hand, so that's a ball ache. But I basically got it to a point where I was like, you know what, if I apply the clear coat, a clear top coat like I did on this, then I think I've got it to a point now where it should come up to enough of a shine, and it did. I mean, it has got quite a nice shine on there. The only thing is, there's definitely imperfections. For some reason, I think there was something going on around this area with the wood, because I couldn't get it to not go from the D to the O, but when it drained from the D to the O, it meant that this part of the D was too low and that was too low. So, and if I filled that up, it just flooded the O, which was annoying. And also the the G and the S were 2 points that for some reason the black resin did not want to completely level out. So there were some indentations there, which for the most part I have managed to fill with clear resin, or to enough of a degree that it's not too bad. Now, I'm at the stage with this and the private sign and the other one that I now want to sand these down. Not lots, just enough to take off sort of the nibs and the imperfections. So, for example, on this one, I don't know if you'll be able to see it. I mean, it doesn't have to be absolutely fucking perfect, anyway. It's going to be outside in all fucking weather conditions. But there are a few sort of nibs and imperfections on it, which I'd just like to try and get rid of before I go applying the exterior varnish on the wood to protect it from the weather. So I do want to sand these down, but I also know that as soon as I touch these with sandpaper, it's going to be a ball ache. So what I'm going to try and do now is basically, with my superfine wet and dry sander, my pad, I am going to try and spray these with water and try and just take a little bit of the imperfections off and see how we get on. I've no idea how it's going to go. I've got a feeling it's going to probably scuff it up exactly the same as it has on all the other occasions. And what I will say is, if there's one thing that hindsight has taught me, is that I would have been so much better off, and I mentioned it with the private, with the other pieces of wood, I would have been so much better off creating a border around this and being able to just pour a whole layer of resin over the whole thing. It wouldn't have had to have been thick, just enough to cover the whole lot. And okay, it would have meant, for example, that all these bits where the wood is, I'd have to sand down shitloads of resin to get down to the wood again. But that probably would have been easier than having the lettering not flat, not levelled, and having loads of bumps and ridges, and having the resin not level out and things like that. So it was very productive in the sense of learning stuff. Now I may have to look at how I would create borders, because I mean on things like this with rounded edges, bit of a ball ache, but I haven't got anything in the immediate pipeline that I'm going to be doing resin work on, so I'm not in too much of a rush with that. I mean, one option would be clear perspex or plexiglass, whatever it's fucking called, and a heat gun, glue gun. That'd work, but obviously on something like this where there's rounded corners, it wouldn't work. Well, it would, as long as I filled in the rounded corner bits with glue, but then I'm going to have to strip glue off the wood. But there are options. So yeah, I mean, even if it had been a case of, for the clear coat, going with a full layer, because then that would have meant, or should have meant, having a perfectly flat surface to work with, and that is something that I haven't had. Although, and I've just said I'm not planning on doing any resin work in the near future, I have had to order some more resin and measuring cups and mixing tubs and stuff like that, because I've run low on the stuff, and also because I was getting fed up of wasting, or basically having excess resin that I had nothing to use it on. I have decided to purchase a couple of things that I may be able to make some stuff out of, just with waste resin. So we'll see how we get on with that. But for now, I am going to see how we get on with turning this around, or should I say turning the camera around and then spraying this, although I don't really want to be on the camera myself because I'm not naked, but I am topless, and the last thing you need to be seeing is my big fat flabby tits shaking about while I'm trying to do a bit of fucking sanding. Right, let me get set up. Right, hopefully you won't get you won't end up feeling a bit queasy with me if my body appears into view. Hopefully it won't do. Right, okay, so I'm going with the wet and dry sander straight away, rather than even the finer sanding papers I've got, simply because this does work with the water, and the water helps. Now, more than likely, as this dries up, it's going to, that's when it will show the dullness that it can create. But I'm hoping that because this is literally just a super fine, it is a very gentle sanding that I'm doing it, I'm hoping that it won't affect it. But yeah, if I went with even if I went with a 3000 grit sandpaper, if I use that dry, it would definitely scuff it and make it very dull. And if I used it wet, I would probably have to use it on the orbital sander, and that would definitely end up scuffing it. So that's why I've gone with this. I can have more control over the direction, and it's the water as well, because it's the water that, like I say, that can be the key to scuffing it and not. But obviously I have to wait and see what it's like as it dries. I've no idea what it will be like when it dries, because every other bit of sanding I've done up to this point has ended up with it being scuffed to fuck. But to be fair, unless that is still wet, that's looking quite nice and shiny. I mean, it ain't perfect. I mean, there are still imperfections on it, but I'm alright with that, you know. I mean, maybe I might need to go a little bit harder on it if I want to get rid of some of the imperfections, but I mean, like I said though, I mean, that's not bad. I mean, compared to what it was when I started, I can't really, I know you can't really see it much, I can't really complain with that. I mean, it's my first sort of real resin project, I can't complain with that at all. And the thing is, even if I go harder on sanding this, there's nothing I'm really going to gain. See, there's indentations, and there's nothing I can do about the indentations, unfortunately. That's where going with a full coating of resin would have worked. Now, okay, I could potentially get my orbital sander and go, right, let's sand this down until it's absolutely flat. But because this wood is weathered and it's got different shapes, and like this bit, none of this bit is flat anyway. So if I sand it down to flat, I'm going to end up with the letters looking wrong, and I've already done a fucking shitload of sanding on it, and I don't think it would benefit from being stripped down in that way. Now, if I'd have gone the other direction and put the board around it, sealed it, and gone for the whole hog resin pour, then yeah, that'd be different. I would then sit there and just sand down that resin until it is all flat and it is all level, because the resin would have filled every single nook and cranny, and unfortunately that's one thing that hasn't happened, perhaps when we're trying to be so precise with it and only fill in the lettering. But it's all part of learning. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, these signs are from my parents' house, and they've been on there, they've had them for what, 4 or 5 years, and they've never looked better than this, so I don't think they'll mind. Also, it's a new skill learnt for me with stuff that I've learnt with it. I'm just going to give this one a little bit more. Now, what I am going to have to do in a moment is I am going to have to stop the recording while I give the other pieces a light sanding, because they're the ones that I don't want to show on camera, so I'm not going to do those on camera. But yeah, what I will be doing though, once I have given these all a light sanding and let them dry, I am going to be applying the varnish, exterior varnish. Now, I was in 2 minds whether that would be something I'd do tonight, but I think, to be honest, I've got a feeling that when I sleep tonight, I am going to wake up feeling like shit tomorrow because of what I've done in the sun. And because, to be honest, I intend on drinking a considerable amount of alcohol in a bit, because I think I fucking deserved it today, with what I've done. So yes, anyway, so I'm thinking if I can get these, at least one coat of varnish on these tonight, I would be very happy. Anyway, I'm going to stop the recording for now, and this bit is that. Okay, I'm about to start applying the clear varnish. Now, it does say that it could add a bit of colour to bare wood, which the top of these aren't bare, but obviously the rest of it is. But also, have to wait 8 hours between coats. And also, I don't know exactly how this is going to cope with going on top of resin. It should be absolutely fine, but since one of you know me to have any luck with absolutely fine, but anyway, I've got a cloth here ready to wipe off the excess in a moment, because it's very difficult to see exactly how much I was applying there. Now I've no idea how long I may have to wait to turn these over to be able to do the underneath. Oh jeez, that's okay. It's interesting. Didn't really want to come off on that. Okay. Now there's a good chance it's going to behave very differently on bare wood compared to on the stained wood of the resined wood. I mean, I may have been better off applying it to the underside first, but oh well, we live and we learn. I'm not going to apply it to the underside of it yet, there's no point. Okay, let's see how it goes with being applied on there. It seemed to get very tacky. So I'm trying to apply it on here. I guess it's just the reaction of the varnish versus the resin. And what I might do is just leave the top rather than trying to wipe the excess off. It's possible that the excess will just spread itself. We'll see. It's already quite shiny, really. So. Now with this, what it said, I think it said 3 coats for untreated wood, and to be fair, most of this is untreated, so probably I'm going to have to do the 3 coats. It's another reason why I kind of wanted to get a coat done tonight if I could, because of having to leave it 8 hours between coats. That's a long time to fucking wait, whereas with the shells that I was making, and the unit that I did, it's what, stains dry, touch dry in 20 minutes. Let's look at this wipe. See how it does. Yeah, touch dry in 20 minutes, but you can put another coat on in an hour. These, 8 hours. So it's a long time to have to wait, but having said that, I probably wouldn't need to do 3 coats on the front. I'll probably get away with just 2 on the front, but we will see. Right, I need to varnish the private ones, so we'll be back in a bit.